Welcome to the Brainz Magazine podcast, a podcast with in-depth interviews and conversations with world-class entrepreneurs, expert coaches, industry leaders, and international celebrities. Get exclusive insight into the world of business, mindset, leadership, and lifestyle with your host, Mark Sefton.
I want to welcome you to the next episode of the Brainz Magazine podcast. And today we go all the way over to Australia. We're going to be speaking with Susan Christie. Susan is the director of AJ Marketing. Good day. How are you?
Good evening, Mark. How are you?
I'm wonderful. That was my poor attempt at an Aussie accent. Good day.
Wasn't bad. Wasn't bad. Trust me, I've heard worse.
So funny. Can you believe it's nearly March?
No, I cannot. In 2024. I don't know where the years are going.
I know, quite. It feels like I was only born last year, right? It's just like unbelievable. I'm 42. I'm playing football with boys that are 16 years old, the same age as my eldest daughter, and I'm like, how?
Yeah. I'm still 24. I'm sure of it.
Well, you're looking great for 24.
After that. Thank you. I'm feeling older than 24, I can tell you.
I'm gonna have to ask you, right? You've been in marketing for over 25 years. Are you not bored?
No, not at all. I love it. And it just keeps changing. It's probably why I'm definitely not bored. And I actually, it sounds horrific when you say 25 years, because if you actually go back that far, we're talking about marketing in times when there was no digital, there was no social media. It was all about, there were billboards, there were magazines, there were fax machines, and it was a very different way of doing it. So to have come through from there and seen how everything evolves and making sure that you stay on top of it every step of the way, it's been a really interesting journey, and it doesn't feel like it's slowing down at all. If anything, it's speeding up right now with everything that's happening in the industry and around the world and with technology.
I was going to say, it's quite impressive that you're 24 years old, but you've been in marketing for 25 years.
I know. Marketers are no good at maths either.
When you say you've really seen marketing like evolve, like and change, can you see, is there some real significant things that stand out in your mind?
Oh, absolutely. I think, back when, initially when I was at university and spent 3 years there getting my degree, there was a lot of focus on research and development. And of course, back then it was the 4 Ps and it was Kotler, and it was that strategic management style of focus that we studied way back then. As we moved through the times, and there were companies and corporates that I worked for that had big teams and sometimes had a lot of, say, stores and things like that. And the focus at those points were to communicate as best you could with stores, and that was done by a fax machine. Rarely would we be picking up phones, calling 80 stores to talk about the next marketing campaign or what merchandise they should have out for, what season it was. But now, if you keep moving forward, once the internet sort of kicked in and emails came to life, things rapidly changed at about that point. And marketers really kicked in, I think, to figure out that there were better ways to get messaging out there. And it felt around that time that's when things started to change and move rapidly, and design principles became a lot more stringent because you could get faster, better messaging, branding out there if your teams could move quick enough and had the budgets to do it as well. And that's the other thing I've noticed over the last probably 5 to 10 years is you can spend a lot less to get a lot more. Whereas in the earlier days, you were predominantly talking television ads, radios, billboards, the out-of-home areas. Now you can do digital campaigns at a much cheaper rate, which is very good for the small and medium businesses that we work with.
Now, Now, often I always think that marketing is storytelling, and there's different ways to tell a story, and we focus a lot, don't we, on branding. And obviously you're the queen of marketing, having, as we said, 25 years of experience. What do you believe is the best thing that we can do for our brands? Like maybe just share one thing that you really feel if we did nothing else but this, and maybe one thing that we shouldn't do because it absolutely kills our brand.
One thing you're gonna limit me to one. I guess probably the area that we work in mostly is with small to medium businesses, and we deal direct with business owners and operators. There is every now and then we'll deal with marketing managers and support marketing teams, and I play consulting roles to other marketing teams as well. But for AJ Marketing, we work with the owner operators. Dealing with them is a benefit in so many ways because they understand their business so well. They generally have the most direction on where that business is going. But a lot of the time they've either never invested in marketing, or they don't know what it is, or they don't know how to get the best out of it. So at that point, when we go in and have the conversation with them, they're usually looking for results that come rapidly, and slowing them down and pulling them back a little bit from that to get an understanding of where their brand is now, where it's come from, and where they want it to be in the future, can be really great conversations that we have with business owners. What I struggle sometimes with, and business owners to understanding, is that their brand is one of their biggest business assets. And even though it's intangible, you could never really put a price on it. Investing in that can bring the business so much more than just marketing growth. And a lot of business owners eventually will look one day to sell or acquire or move out. And at that point, there's value in the brand that they've built. And that's when they start to understand as well that investing in it is something that can really bring more than just immediate results and support for their sales team. So I would always, and generally we do get asked a lot, well, how much do we need to invest in the brand and how much will we get for that? And, what's the ROI and things like that. But any type of budget, just as a general figure, we would always say there's, for the long-term gain and benefits for branding, around that 40%, and for your short-term tactical that you need, for your campaigns and sales support, 60% of your budget. And that I find has always been quite successful for the businesses that follow that sort of standard and trend.
Yeah, it does drive me nuts a little bit right now. Of course, you have to look after the bottom line because, no business is going to survive. So, I totally obviously understand that and advocate that myself as well. But sometimes too many owners, too many businesses, too many entrepreneurs, they're so consumed by whether if they do something, whether it brings a financial return. And for me, branding is about building a relationship which should be irrelevant of whether it brings in a significant amount of money, because sometimes it's really about creating that service and that connection. And it does my nut. Does it do your nut?
I'm so glad you said that. I probably wouldn't say it as aggressively as that, but
that was calm.
Good. I'd hate to see you fired up then. It does. Because there's been so many business owners that we've worked with that they haven't touched their marketing, they haven't touched their brand, and they rely solely on a sales team, and generally one or two salespeople who could walk out the door or get hit by a bus tomorrow, and then they're left with nothing. And at that point, if you don't have a brand, you're just a commodity, and it comes down to pricing. But your brand can walk in the door before anything else can, and you're already in front of the game. So to have to drag some business owners along for that journey of why they should invest, yes, those can be frustrating conversations, but where the reward really is once we've worked with businesses for a couple of months, or we start to see results, when those business owners turn around and say, I'm so proud of my brand, and that has happened time and time again, and that is bigger than any reward that we could get. We recently started working with one of the biggest, let's say, an equipment provider here in Australia, and they hadn't touched any of their marketing, any of their branding. They've been around for 40 years and hadn't touched a thing. So it was pretty dated and pretty daggy, really. And they didn't really see the benefit in marketing. But within 3 months after we went through that whole rebranding exercise and explained to them, what it can do, and the sales team even lifted behind it, they knew, that it needed something, and were suddenly really proud to be going out with their sales collateral and the new website, and, social media was happening so they could engage online with that as well. They're obviously really happy in that business, but they wanted something that they could be proud of. And the business owner in that instance did turn around to us and say, I love my branding. I see it here and I see it there. And now that we're putting it on buildings and it's kind of going everywhere. But to have that feedback and for this, to see those owners love their business again, it's really, really rewarding.
How do we then make our branding profitable? And I don't just mean the old pennies, because for me, when I think of profitable, it's rich in relationship, rich in reputation, and rich in obviously the fact that it is generating a business, because obviously that is the lifeblood. But how do we make a brand profitable?
It's a good question. It's a tougher one for businesses these days. The economy out here in Australia, and particularly getting through COVID and sort of the post-COVID hangover, particularly here in Melbourne, we had a very long lockdown, and business owners did find it, if they hadn't sort of moved and adjusted during that 2-year period, they were very much struggling to come back from the brink of that. I think the answer to that is probably turns once, your branding piece is right, moves into that strategic area. And this is something small businesses probably lack a lot of. They generally are looking day to day, week to week, month to month, without that longer term strategy. So to have something in place that really reviews where your brand's at, where you want it to go, what do your customers think about that? Where are you positioned? Who are you targeting? Is there more than one target? Usually the answer to that is yes. And if there is more than one target, how are you getting to the different channels in different ways? One thing that we see a lot of is there's sort of companies that will go, oh, well, we just want to do Google AdWords, or we just want to do Facebook ads, and sort of pigeonholing yourself into one area without really trialing everything. Having a plan around it is something that doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. And I've seen a lot of small businesses lose money, resources, time doing that, rather than taking the time to actually put together a proper strategy, positioning, competitor analysis, and get it right.
Okay, good. Now, I know that one thing often people get confused with branding is they often think of like the logo. Obviously, your logo is a part of that, but not standalone. Now, your logo for me has a kind of a Middle Eastern vibe to it. I really like it, but it reminds me of Emirates, just in the font and the way that it's designed. But what should a logo say about your brand, and maybe tell us what your logo says about yours? What have you really tried to encapsulate there? Because it is a really nice brand, but I associate with Middle East.
That's so interesting. I actually heard that feedback before, but I'm going to go back and look at that now. I'll probably start not with my logo, but with sort of branding and logos in general for businesses. One thing that way back when I was working for corporates out of university, working for corporates over quite a number of years before I got into a sort of the Australian owned and operated small to medium businesses, was when you're in the bigger companies and the bigger corporates, the marketing teams and I was really conscious of not building brands around people, around managers or CEOs or anything like that, because it is something that should be able to stand on its own. It shouldn't be built around a personality or a particular thing. However, as time went on and I got into the smaller businesses, the SMEs, owner operated, much tighter budgets, much more, it was really hard sometimes to not build a brand around the personalities that owned those businesses. And that's still a challenge that I think I grapple with at times, because you can see the owner wants to take the business one way, but it might be at odds with what their brand actually is, because it's been done around that owner organically without them maybe even realizing it sometimes. And in the case of my logo, it was actually put together very quickly. My head of design here, he's amazing, so he generally reads my mind. And I said to him one day, I've got to just do my branding. I've got clients, so I'm just going to worry about that. So could you just do my brand and do my marketing? That'd be great, because I'm busy with clients. And he said to me at the time, he's like, well, what is even the business name? I'm like, well, I don't know. What's something creative? Because I don't have a lot of time or thought to put into my own things. And anyway, it sort of came about that, well, I have 2 boys, and at the time it was happening, it was busy, and one thing that I never wanted to lose sight of was my family, and I've been lucky enough to be able to keep my business quite low and controlled for about 3 or 4 years while I raised my boys, and then now they're in a great place and off to school and a lot more independent, that I can now drive the business a bit more. So the AJ is for my son's names, Aston and Jake, and the A actually looks a little bit like my oldest boy, because he's got sort of the big round sort of buffy head like mine, and my younger boy has big long legs, Jake, and my designer just pulled it together. I love it. It works. So
it does work.
It's a good reminder of why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. Talk to me about brand archetypes. Why does it matter?
I love them. I never did, but they were something that were taught way back when, and they haven't seemed to have changed too much over time, which I also like. They sort of hold up. We used them a lot when we were working I worked for one of the major FMCG companies here in Australia, but they're global. And the agencies that we worked with, so I was on the other side of the coin there, were very heavy on using them when we were looking at either rebranding or bringing in a new brand and figuring out how we would use our tone of voice with those brands and where they would be positioned amongst competitors, and what it was they actually stood for. So are we going to educate people? Are we going to be fun for people? What is it that we're bringing to the table with this particular brand, and where does it fit within the market that we're trying to get into? As, again, I've moved into the small, medium businesses, they've come in really handy at times for business owners who sit there and go, well, I've been here for 30 years. I don't really know where I fit. I don't really know what my brand stands for. I don't really know how I sit amongst competitors. And it's just a nice, easy exercise for them to be taken through to go, oh, actually, you know what? I am a sage and I can educate people, and that's really where I want to be. Or, oh, no, I'm going to disrupt and move into the market this way. So getting them to understand the placement of their brand and their business on a simpler level is a great place, I find, to start them with, and then we can drill a lot deeper from there once we really figure out where it is we're going and what it is the brand and the business are feeling for the market that they're in.
Yes, it's really about identity, isn't it? Identity of this is who we are and this is what we do, and then being able to communicate that in a way that people are like get it. Like even for myself at the moment, I'm thinking, do people know what I can do, and do people know what I can do for them? And that's always like the question we have to ask ourselves is, what is it that we do, and what problem are we solving, or how are we actually benefiting the consumer or the customer? And too often, I think businesses make it too much about them and lose sight of the fact that it is actually about the audience.
Absolutely. We do find that a lot too. I'm very big on customer research and customer surveys and feedback. And I would say probably 8 times out of 10, the feedback that comes back and not what the clients are expecting.
Exactly.
They've missed where they're at with their business, definitely, and their brand.
Exactly.
It's always an interesting exercise.
Now, within the Brainz community, there's a lot of creatives. How do we drive people to our content? Like, for me, I'm creating daily content. I'm sure there's lots of people all around the world they're focused on their mission and on their brand. But how do we get people to actually see our content? Because sometimes I think that's still a challenge for a lot of us. You could have the best podcast, the best book, the best marketing agency, but how do we get people to interact? It still blows my mind that sometimes I can produce a daily video, and I can pop it on all the different social media. It'll have 300 on TikTok and then 17,000 on Facebook. And for me, there seems to be no rhythm.
That's usually because Facebook are mucking with the algorithm every other day too, right? So that doesn't help anybody. It's a good question. And I think if there was a one easy answer, then there'd be a lot more people in marketing and a lot more businesses that would be doing a lot better. We find that research, trial, refinement, that process will get you there. And marketing is always a marathon. It's not a sprint. And I think consistency is definitely key, but giving it the time to get into the market, it's got to be well planned. Certainly work within the algorithm rules of at least 3 posts a week, and mix it up with, if you're on Instagram, use reels and stories as well as just on your feed. So those sorts of obvious things should always be utilized as well. But generally, one thing that I can say I always find is that it's not just one channel that's going to do it for you. So figure out where your market is, wherever that may be, and trial and error in the way that you're delivering content, in how, even your tone of voice, your imagery, whether you're using videos, mix it up, watch your stats, and keep seeing what works. But this is where I think a lot of small businesses also don't have a lot of time to be doing that sort of checking. So they'll throw it out there, and it might be a well thought through piece, but then they don't have an understanding of why or why not it goes well. So analytics are really important. Reporting is really important. And that's something marketing agencies should always be delivering to their clients as well. So they are still being brought along for that journey and have an understanding of what's happening, because the reality is not every post or not every piece is going to be, better than the last. It is, in a graph, it should always be, if you're looking at it from a long way away, it should always be heading in an upwards direction. But if you zoom in closely, there are peaks and troughs within that. So, but if you're generally refining as you go and checking in with your customers, like we talked about, then you're going to be heading in the right direction. But there's no silver bullet that's going to be right for everybody. That's for sure.
What are your thoughts on going live on socials? Because you talked about reels and posts, which are obviously things that we do ahead of time, even if it's just a minute before. But what about lives? Are you a real advocate? Do you really see the traction of this? I know it's uncomfortable for a lot of people, but
yeah,
it's
an interesting one. I'm not sure what's happening in the market over where you are, but here in Australia, we seem to have had a big movement towards, we would call them more lead generation agencies. So they're not so much about getting content together. They're not so much about the brand. They will generally just get the content from the business owner or whoever it is that's giving it to them, and they just load it. So there's not really much thought by them around what the brand or the business might be trying to achieve. It's okay, you've given us this, and we're going to push it out with the budget that you've given us. A lot of what I'm seeing from those agencies is because there would be pushback then by people going, well, I don't know what content to do. And these agencies then say, just put a camera in front of your face. And when I've seen that happen, it's never really, it's been rare that I've seen companies do that really well or people do that really well. I think there is a place for live videos if the person and the brand allow for that. But proceed with caution is generally my take on it. And it's not because I believe that people should be nervous about it. I think that they just need to be really clear that there's a benefit for them and their brand in doing that. And if they do that, it is going to build on that business and that brand and that company. And it's not just about, ego or filling a spot for content that they need, or because they are having a great day and are looking great. It should be strategic.
It's interesting because I feel like we need to be more accessible. And I've seen that definite shift in that. When you think of like Tesla, you think of Elon Musk. And when you thought of Apple, you thought of Steve Jobs, right? So it's almost like, when you think of AJ marketing, you really need to be thinking Susan Christie, needing to have, the face and the heart behind the brand. Do you value and rank that as much as maybe what I do?
It's probably something that I myself have proceeded with caution with it. And like I mentioned, over the last few years, when I wasn't driving my business, I was quite luckily enough to be in a comfortable space without needing to go out too much. But now that we're sort of making those moves and those jumps, it's something that does cross my mind a lot more. And again, for me personally, if I'm in a place or a space where I have something to share that I think would really benefit my followers or my community or people that would be watching, I don't hesitate in doing that. But it's not something that I schedule in to do every week. I just don't think that people want to see my face on their feeds constantly and regularly. I think they're probably more interested in the work that I'm doing, the businesses that I'm helping, and what type of marketing we're involved in at the moment.
But even you showing up on a podcast like this is giving that connection, isn't it? It's giving that opportunity for people to really connect, because I always talk about the importance of having that relationship. I talk about the last time I bought my car, I went to 4 dealerships that all had the same model of car, but I bought it from the guy that I had the greatest rapport and energy with, and he wasn't the cheapest. He was actually the second most expensive. And yet for me, like that's how I believe that a lot of people are doing business these days. They want to really connect with that human side.
That certainly is true in the marketing space as well. I know that a lot of the business owners that I deal with, it's never a sit down and, oh, you're hired. There's a lot of catch-ups. There's a lot of conversations. And I am completely understanding of that, because what they essentially do is they give us the keys to the marketing for their business. And that takes a lot of trust to do that. And in a lot of instances, we do a lot of work out here for trades and HVAC and male dominant industries that currently still have a lot of the older generation men in them. So when, a younger blonde woman comes into the room and starts telling them about things that they don't know about, there can be barriers there for those things. But in those instances, me getting on a live and doing social media like that they're not the audience that are going to respond to that either. So again, I probably structure and strategize around who it is that I'm targeting and the conversations that I'm having with business owners, and to trust us to do their marketing and get involved in their business with their financials and their sales team and their targets is something that is built beyond social media, and a lot of conversations as well.
Nice. So as we bring this into land, Susan, I always I always kind of like to give people a chance to speak either intuitively about just what they feel maybe we haven't touched on, or just something that you really feel is an important kind of takeaway for us to all consider, and then let people know how they can better interact with you and find out more about AJ Marketing.
Oh, one thing that I love about what you do and the magazine as well is that you're all the way over the other side of the world, but we have worked with international clients and there's no barriers for us. So I would hope that people would have no hesitation reaching out and getting in contact with us. We are everywhere. We are across all the channels, and we're responsive and certainly open to talking to anybody about their marketing. Small to medium business owners generally have a lot of questions. We love having those conversations, particularly with people who are really uncertain or have had bad experiences or currently have an admin person doing their marketing and just don't seem to be getting anything out of it, because that's not how marketing should be viewed. It's an investment in your business and it can grow your business. And that's something that we love to talk to people about, no matter where they are in the world. And I know entrepreneurs and small businesses can grapple with the loneliness of being business owners and not sure what to do. So find someone you are comfortable with and reach out. And certainly I hope that's a gap that we can fill. Absolutely.
Amazing. And how do people find out more about you?
I'm on LinkedIn, Susan.Christie, www.ajmarketing.com.au, Facebook and Instagram as well.
Lovely. Well, it's been really great just to spend the last 30 minutes just chatting with you and really getting an understanding of branding and marketing and obviously your business, AJ Marketing, and tapping into some of those 25 years of experience, only being 24 years of age is wonderful.
I know, right? We're really strong in maths here as well.
Susan, thank you.
Thank you, Mark, for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for joining this episode with me, Mark Sefton. I hope you've really enjoyed it. Feel free to leave us a positive review on iTunes, and I look forward to welcoming you back to the next episode of the Brainz Magazine podcast.